Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, here to give my review on Allied, which is the 2016 romantic thriller film set in World War II, directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard. Like the film Arrival that I did a review to a couple of weeks ago, it was one of those movies that kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I just saw a trailer for it. I didn't do a reaction for it or anything like that, but it was one where I went to see a film at the cinema, got a trailer for it, and with this one I was instantly hooked. For anyone who doesn't know the plot of Allied, reading off IMDb, it says in 1942, an intelligence officer in North Africa, played by Brad Pitt, encounters a female French resistance fighter, played by Marion Cotillard, on a deadly mission behind enemy lines. When they reunite in London, their relationship is tested by the pressures of war. It doesn't really go into it there, and this isn't a spoiler. This first section will all be spoiler-free, by the way, guys. This is a film I do not want to spoil for you, so I will let you know when I get to my spoiler section. But this is in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away, but those pressures of war are the fact that Marion Cotillard is accused of being a German spy. And right from that, when I saw the trailer, the intrigue was there, the curiosity was there, and I knew this was a movie that I was going to love. Like, I had to go and see it, because I do love a good spy or espionage film. And this is a great mystery film as well. It really, really is, all the way through the movie. The film keeps you guessing, you're questioning allegiances all the way through the film, and that is a sign of a great movie. And we need to talk about the direction on this one as well. Robert Zemeckis, who is probably one of the most varied directors out there. Most directors, like if you look at your Spielbergs, Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, they all have a defined style to their direction. Zemeckis, I haven't really picked up on that, to be honest. I mean, you look back to his old films, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future trilogy, Forrest Gump, Castaway, they're all very different, in my opinion anyway, but we know the guy can direct dramas, and actually have yet to see the film that he brought out, was it last year? The Walk, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Heard mixed things on that, but I do want to check that out at some point. But his direction in this film is fantastic, because not only does it focus on the romance side of the film, which is more or less the first half of the movie, but he also touches on action, which is filmed great action in this movie. Although there's not a lot of it, it's very much grounded in character, and the main focus is on Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard's romance in the film, which is inherently what it should be. That's the main crux of the story. That's the main foundation of the film. But for the action that there is, it's great. He also delves into the espionage and spy side of things, which is very tense. And there are some scenes in this movie which, to me, almost achieve Tarantino levels of tension. It really, really does. And I'll get into the Inglourious Basterds comparisons later in the spoiler section, but I guess I could say that this is the third in the trilogy of Brad Pitt killing Nazi movies, with the likes of Inglourious Basterds and Fury, and now Allied with this one. So I guess the trilogy is complete with this. But speaking of Brad Pitt, let's get into performances now. So Brad Pitt is our leading man in this movie, and Brad Pitt's just a great actor. He really, really is. I was a little unsure of his performance at the beginning of this film, especially with the whole romance side of the film. Not to say the romance is bad, because he and Marion Cotillard have fantastic chemistry in this film. The two work off each other really well, and the relationship in the film is very believable. However, I never really got a great sense of their relationship at the beginning of this film when they're on their mission together. I think there were a few scenes that maybe were cut for time, because I did notice some abrupt edits in the film, some abrupt cuts which did kind of take me out of the movie just for a second. It felt like they actually filmed a lot more for those sections. Maybe it was cut for time, I don't know. This film just sits at over 2 hours. But when it gets into the side where, and again, this isn't spoiling anything because this is all in the trailer, when it gets into the section of the movie where Brad Pitt is brought forward with information that his wife may be a German spy, the paranoia that he shows, and it's all done without dialogue, it's all with expression, and you can see that inner turmoil that's just eating him up inside, that this woman who he loves, who he has a child with, may be working for the other side against him. And it's some great acting from Brad Pitt, and from that side of the movie, that kind of won me over on his performance. I think that side of his performance is definitely a lot stronger than the romance. Not to say it's bad, but for me personally, I didn't buy completely into their connection at the beginning of the film. Marion Cotillard, on the other hand, was flawless all the way through, and it'll be very interesting actually to see if this movie picks up any kind of Oscar buzz as we move towards the Academy Awards season. I definitely think her performance in this film should guarantee her at least a nomination for Best Lead Actress. She is great in this film, and that really goes for every other film that she's in. For me personally, Marion Cotillard really shines when she does have that air of mystery to her, when there's that sort of smouldering danger to her character. If you look at her role in Inception, for example, from 2010, as the character of Moll, that is one of my favourite performances of her. Even when she's playing genuinely nice characters, such as Big Fish, Fish. I think she's great in those movies too, but for me, I like when there's that little bit of danger to her, and she brings that completely to this role as well. And as I said, it's a great mystery film. It does keep you guessing all the way through, and with the character of Brad Pitt, you are questioning whether you think she may be a spy or is she innocent, and I think the film achieves that completely. So let's talk about the chemistry between the two. Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard do work very, very well together in this film, and they are kind of the crux of this movie. And really the whole film rests on them, because if you didn't buy into that chemistry, this whole film would completely fall apart. But you're with them, you believe in the romance. As I said, it felt like some things were a little rushed at the beginning. If there was a little bit more development given to those earlier scenes, I think it would have been much stronger as a film. That being said, I still love the film as a whole, and really the chemistry is what carries the film. These are the two characters you care about, you want to see them together, and when Brad Pitt receives this news and just shakes everything up, it's fascinating to watch this relationship change. And without going into spoilers, the first section of this film is set in Casablanca, so as a fan of that movie myself, I did pick up on the romantic nature of Casablanca as a place. Again, this is set in wartime, just like the film Casablanca is. Now, I'm not comparing this movie to that film in any stretch of the imagination, but like subconsciously, I did sort of tune into that myself, and I think that did elevate the romantic side to it, as Casablanca is one of the greatest movies ever made and one of the greatest romantic movies ever made. So really, that's kind of all I can say without going into spoilers, because as it is a romantic thriller, the focus is on this pairing of the Brad Pitt character and the Marion Cotillard one, and I don't want to give anything away or let slip anything else. So I'll give my overall recommendation now and then move into spoilers afterwards. So I would absolutely recommend this movie. I'm not quite sure how this movie would stack in terms of my favourite ones from this year. It may even be in my top 10, because as we know, this year hasn't been a great one for movies in general. Don't get me wrong, there have been some fantastic ones, but in terms of sheer numbers of great movies, it's been significantly lower this year. But I'm looking at the ratings now, the critical response. This is according to Wikipedia. It's currently sitting at 63% based on 114 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really, really low. Not to say 63% is a bad score by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very average one. It's above average and it's still certified fresh. But that really shocks me. It's definitely a better movie than that percentage suggests. But that's if you go by numerics. I like to go by actual opinion. And I would highly recommend this movie if you're a lover of romance films, war films, spy films, anything like that. You will definitely like this movie. The pacing of the film is great. It's a great mystery film. It keeps you guessing at all times. And the standouts are the performances with Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard, which in my opinion are worthy of a nomination at the Academy Awards, especially for Marion Cotillard. She really, really is the standout in this movie. If you like Robert Zemeckis films, absolutely check this out. If you like drama films, it really does cover the gamut with many styles in this film, so I think it will appeal to a lot of people. Check it out on the big screen as well, because there is still a lot of spectacle in this movie that I think you will appreciate on a bigger screen. And yeah, it's just a quality film, great filmmaking. I really can't say anything bad about it really, and if I do, it's very nitpicky. So definitely check out Allied. So that'll do it for my spoiler-free section. I'll move on to spoilers now, because this is really where the main body of my review is going to come in, and as it is a mystery film, I didn't want to give anything away before, so this is absolutely the last resort. If you haven't seen Allied and you want to check it out and you don't want anything spoiled, please click off this review now, come back after you've seen it, because I'm going to spoil the hell out of this thing. So you have been warned, let's get on to the ending. So Marion Cotillard at the end of the movie is found out to be a spy. She is found out to be the German spy they were suspecting, and it's such a heartbreaking moment, because throughout the film, and I'm guessing everyone that's still watching this review, if you've seen the movie, you may have thought this too, it's right after Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt get married in the film. Brad Pitt's sister shows up, and you know there's something not quite right about her, because she's asking a lot of questions. Brad Pitt's superiors tell him, you can't give this information out to anyone else that we suspect her. We're going to call you up at 7 minutes past 11 at night with some false information. You're going to make a note of it. You're going to leave it in a place where your wife can read it. And then if we see that that information's then been passed on to the Germans, even though it's false information, we'll know that it was from her. And Brad Pitt goes to his sister and he tells her about that they suspect his wife may be a German spy. They've told him to take all these precautions to try and catch her out. And because he was divulging that information to his sister, I initially thought, oh, it's going to be the sister. Regardless of what happens to Marion Cotillard, whether she is killed for treason at the end, I thought, is there going to be a big twist anywhere? It turns out to be his sister, and, you know, his wife has died for nothing. And I think that was a great bit of misdirection in the film, but ultimately it comes back round that no, Marion Cotillard is the spy. And the scene in question where he finds this out is heartbreaking, because he goes on a lot of secret missions on his own to try and discover information, because he's given the task of, you know, if your wife is the spy, you've got to kill her. It's got to be done by your own hand. If you don't comply, you will be killed for high treason because you haven't followed orders from your superiors. So it's this huge weight on Brad Pitt's shoulders. And as I said, his performance is fantastic. There's a moment in this where when he hears the news, he's told to go back home and pretend like this has never happened. He's got to go back to normal, back to being a husband, back to being a father, all that stuff, and play happy families. And even like his wife can tell that something has changed. She doesn't know what at that point, but she knows that something's up. Like, he'll initially walk in, go to the kitchen table, start reading the newspaper, and she's like, I think this is in the trailer as well, where she's like, hey, where's my kiss? Like, you know, you're acting funny. And, you know, like, he's in the bathroom, he moves the bathroom mirror so he can keep an eye on her in the corner of his eye. It's some great paranoia that's built up in this film. So he goes on all these secret missions by himself to try and get information, to find out whether she is innocent, or whether she has taken the identity of someone else. And it ultimately comes down to where he breaks into this prison cell, which is actually a great, great action scene, very, very tension-filled. And he learns that Marion Beausejour, which is Marion Cotillard's character, she played the piano for the Germans in a bar many, many years ago on a previous mission. So he goes back to his wife and he breaks into a pub and he sits her in front of a piano and he says, I want you to play the piano for me. And she obviously can't do it. And he learns in that moment that she is the spy. And Cotillard's performance in this moment, she just breaks down in tears. Brad Pitt's asking her, was any of this real? Do you genuinely love me? Or was it all an act, just like everything else was? And, you know, it's so believable. It's so raw, the emotion that Marion Cotillard brings to this scene, where she's like, yes, of course it's real. I'm the mother of your child. I'm your wife. I've loved you since Casablanca. And you believe it. In that moment, you believe it. And you feel the disappointment and the sadness in the Brad Pitt character. And the fact that, you know, they have been together for so long, and what he ultimately will have to do for his country and for his own life as well, and for the well-being of his daughter's life too, which ultimately does lead to a very, very sad ending where, you know, he says, we've got about an hour, we need to escape from here, let's go. He tries to hijack a plane, but the army shows up and blocks him in and says, right, we're trying you for high treason because you were trying to take her away from here. And we learn earlier that there's a gun in the glove compartment, and we know how it's going to end. You can predict it. Marion Cotillard comes out, shoots herself, and the army guy, after seeing this and realise the heartbreak and the turmoil in the Brad Pitt character, he covers for him. He says, look, we'll report it that you took her life with your own hand, as was instructed. That's how it's going to be reported. That's an order. So he's off the hook at the end. But the end of this film is very sad, and there's a great monologue as well, where Marion Cotillard's character has written a letter to her daughter so that when she gets older she can read it and she can learn that she loved her. And it's a very heartbreaking ending. Then it cuts to credits, and I think that everyone was kind of, if they weren't welling up, they all felt the emotion in that scene. So flipping through the romance side of it now, I felt like I had to talk about the ending first, but I wanted to get onto some other stuff as well that I noticed in the film. So the whole Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard killing Nazis is one of the most entertaining aspects to this film, in my opinion. I guess it's just fun to see Brad Pitt do that in his movies. And what was fantastic is there's an actor in this movie called August Diehl, I think that's how you pronounce it, who plays a character called Hobart, who's a high-ranking German officer. And actually, he is in Inglourious Bastards. For anyone who's seen that movie, it's in the scene where, with Bridget von Hammersmark, they go to that tavern to learn that Hitler is going to be attending the premiere, and that German officer that walks over and sits at the table and plays the card game with them and ultimately finds them out for being English spies. It's that guy. He sort of looks like Christopher Walken a bit. He looks very, very menacing. He's in this movie, and he's ultimately playing exactly the same character as he was in Inglourious Bastards. And he shares a scene with Brad Pitt in the film. You can cut the atmosphere with a machete. It's really great stuff. And this was the scene I was referring to earlier, where you can compare it to a Tarantino film in terms of its writing and its pace and its tension building. And not just because they were both in Inglourious Bastards, but the scene is that Brad Pitt is posing as a character who works with phosphorus, and they've both been invited to this German party where the German ambassador is going to be attending, and his and Marion Cotillard's mission is to assassinate this guy and escape. And they go to Hobart to ask permission to this party, and Brad Pitt's kind of playing a role where he's like, well, I don't really want to go to this party, but my wife's making me go. I'd much rather go to this high-stakes poker game that's going on in the town of Casablanca. And Hobart right there says, well, I'm a poker player too. I tell you what, we'll cut the deck, and if you have the highest card, you get to go to your poker game. If I have the highest card, you have to come to this party. And Brad Pitt plays along, so he asks Brad Pitt to cut the deck, and he's, Brad Pitt's doing all this creative shuffling, where they sort of like juggle the cards back and forth, like insanely skilled shuffling. And right there you can tell that Hobart's clocking on, like, maybe this guy doesn't work in phosphorus, like maybe there's something else to him. And you can tell that he suspects he's a spy. He absolutely does. And that's why August Deal is such a great actor. In the 2 films I've seen him in where he both plays a Nazi, he's a great actor because just from a stare where he doesn't say anything, it says so much. And the tension in this scene's fantastic. Brad Pitt pulls a card, and I think he has 6. Hobart pulls a card, and it's the Jack, so he has the higher card. And just as they're about to leave, like Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt are almost out the door, he calls him over and he says, before you go, can you write the chemical formula down for phosphorus? And right there you think, like, oh God, is he going to be found out? Does he know it? But he writes it down, and he kind of looks at it, and he still thinks that something's up, but he's like, okay, you're off the hook, and he gives it him back. And that's like his one scene in the film. He gets shot later on in the big action scene at the party that they're attending, but that one scene was fantastic, and I love the fact that he was in this movie because he's such a good actor. I'm sure he's like a German actor. He's been in lots of other German films, but I've only seen him in this now and Inglourious Bastards. Another great scene in this movie as well that I wanted to talk about with great performances is where the SOE official calls down Brad Pitt to initially bring this information to him that his wife is a spy, played by Simon McBurney. And I've seen him in a lot of films. He was in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation and Conjuring 2 from earlier this year. And he's a very strange actor. Like in this movie, like he's sitting behind the desk, he's got his glasses on, he's very menacing, and he's very by the book. And when Brad Pitt initially dismisses the claims, like there's no way my wife can be a spy, he is regimented, and there's even a scene where he goes to reach for a gun when Brad Pitt starts kicking off in the room. It's a great scene, it's acted brilliantly. This, again, is his one scene in the film, but he plays a pivotal role in this movie where he brings this information forward. It's a fantastically well-acted scene, both from Simon McBurney, Jared Harris, and Brad Pitt. They all worked really well together in this film. If I'm going to bring up any negatives with this film, and again, there aren't many, this is me nitpicking because I really did enjoy this movie. Apart from the editing at the start, which I said felt very choppy at some points, like they did cut a lot out, really for me, it was the visual effects. Now, there are some great moments in this film in terms of the visual effects, such as when they're throwing a house party and the blitz is going on and you can see all the German aircraft in the sky and a plane almost hits their house. That was some great effects and that looked fine. Really the only ones that stood out for me were when the actors are on a green screen, and that's most prevalent where they are in the deserts of Casablanca. There's a scene where Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt are kind of sitting on a sand dune, and you see this in the trailer and you can tell they're not there at all. The green screen's really, really bad. It's very noticeable. You don't see like any kind of haze around the characters or anything like that, but I don't know if it was the integration of the green screen and the simulation that they're on this environment, like with fans on them, but you could just tell they were in a studio in front of a screen. It totally didn't look like they were on a desert at all. The background itself was very blurry, which again sort of like emphasised that lack of depth between the two. But it did lead to one of the great scenes in the film, a great romantic scene between the two, where a sandstorm's about to hit them. So they both sit in the car, and that's where they first have sex. And that's really where the culmination of all the tension they've shared before, the romantic chemistry between the two culminates. And the sound in this scene is fantastic because as the scene intensifies, so too does the sound of the sandstorm hitting the car. I thought that was a very well acted scene. The sound design in that scene and everything really worked for me. And as I said, that's one of the standout points in the film, is this pairing between Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard. So I guess that's all I can talk about. So if I give my overall recommendation again, I would highly recommend this movie. It's probably one of my favourite films of the year. It's a great drama, great thriller, great romance film with some great action in there. Not too much. It mostly is focused on the relationship. But the standout and the takeaway from this movie for me, other than the direction from Zemeckis, is the main two performances, which really do carry the movie. They have some great chemistry, they really work well off each other, and that's really what elevates the movie for me. So that'll do it for my review on Allied. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of this movie. Let me know what you've thought of any of Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard's previous movies, any of Zemeckis' movies, anything you like, please do drop me a comment. Also, keep the comments spoiler-free, please, because I know that some people might only be watching the spoiler-free section, and this is a film where I really think you do have to go and see it and go in without being spoiled for anything, so you can make up your mind as the film progresses. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, there'll be more reaction videos from me, there'll be more movie reviews. Next week, Moana comes out, which is the latest Disney animated classic, which I cannot wait for. I'm a huge Disney fan, so I'll be at that one, so expect a review from that next week. We're nearing the end of Harry Potter month now. We've just got our last 2 reviews of Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, and on Tuesday we're going live for a new Battle of the Brackets episode to finish out Harry Potter month, where we're arguing best Harry Potter character, so please do tune into that. We'll have times up on our Twitter and Facebook page tomorrow for that. And the month of December, we're moving into Star Wars month in anticipation for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. We've already got tickets booked for the midnight screening. There'll be a review for that, more Battle of the Brackets, top 10 episodes, and just general discussions about Star Wars itself. We're all massive Star Wars fans on this channel, so please do hit that subscribe button so you can keep updated with all of our content as we move towards the end of the year. So that'll do it for my video for right now, and until the next one, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.